Fantasy Football Warriors. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Warriors podcast. We are your hosts, Eddie Bravo, Tank Sinatra. Without further ado, let's move into it. We're going to start off with Waiver Wire Week 12. Let's get it.
Exciting times.
Let's get it. We're just at the cusp
The playoff
of fantasy
time, yep.
playoff season mode.
Exciting if you're a contender, and you're probably depressed if you're not.
If you're not a contender, right?
Yeah.
But, you still got to keep playing to the end, man.
Absolutely.
Still got to keep playing to
Especially
the
if
end.
you,
Do not give it up.
You play with us. We make it worth your while.
That's right. There's
with,
always something to play for in the NFL.
Incentivizing your participation.
Absolutely.
In the purge each week. Anyway, so buys. This is kind of buy-mageddon. I haven't looked at what the buys look like next week or in the subsequent weeks, but I know this one's pretty brutal. We've got Cincinnati losing a lot of playmakers there, Buffalo, Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and the Jets. So there's plenty of players you've probably been starting that you're going to be without. So prepare.
Yes.
Right? Hopefully you've got good depth. If not, you might need to look at some of these waiver wire options that seem risky or not high end, right? And you need to be looking at them to just better than zero.
But it's better than 0 points.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
and sometimes if those waiver wires are not available,
you might have to go deeper.
You might have to take an L. You might have to just roll with the buys and take an L instead of like blowing up your lineup, right?
Yeah.
And just looking for waiver wire help. But finding those waiver wire nuggets is definitely better than just taking a 0 because one of your guys is on bye.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So, if you are without Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, maybe Kirk Cousins, I hope not Trevor Lawrence or Derek Carr, I hope not Aaron Rodgers, but Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. If you are without one of those two people, you should probably be looking at Matthew Stafford. Since Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp have returned, he has 279 plus passing yards in each of the last 4 weeks, as well as 2+ touchdowns and 3 out of 4 with 2 4-touchdown games. So he's been balling out with his weapons back. Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford has been getting that offense moving.
Which was always the hope all season.
Yeah.
And then the injuries hit, and it was like...
Now Matthew Stafford can't do anything.
Yeah.
So Matthew Stafford is looking good as probably a long-term option too. But if you need him this week, he's who I'd be looking for. Anthony Richardson is another option for you here. Yeah, obviously been pretty brutal all season, but coming off of his benching here, his 2-week bench, he looked pretty good, and it was...
He did, and it was, I had talked about it, when Josh Downs was coming back.
Yeah.
I was like, Josh Downs could be the key to getting him going, right? Every quarterback needs that reliable wideout out there. I was kind of hoping that Josh Downs would be able to help Anthony Richardson produce. And then it was kind of the Joe Flacco show, and he wasn't there. And then over the past, couple of weeks, he's been looking all right. And Josh Downs has been helping him out. So
yeah, so with this first week back, you can pick him up. The schedule's brutal though. He's it's hard for me to recommend him with a ton of confidence, given with the larger body of work we have from Anthony Richardson. Yeah. And the schedule's gonna be.
It's always about the rushing upside with him.
Yep, and this was the first time he scored a rushing touchdown since week 1, which is kind of unbelievable because he did start quite a few games before he got benched.
Yeah.
And he only scored 1 rushing touchdown, and that was in week 1. So pretty brutal, but he scored 1 this week, so hopefully they get that going. Shane Steichen obviously made a point of getting him involved early on the ground. I think they started off with 3 or 4 designed running plays to start the game. So that was clearly within the game plan. So
maybe the benching helped him out.
Made him a little bit sad. He plays better sad.
Sometimes you got to shoot a hostage.
I guess so. Maybe he learned a lot from Joe Flacco.
I mean, you never know, right?
Yeah, I don't know. But like I said, the schedule is brutal upcoming. Rest of the way, he's got Detroit, New England, then a bye week, then Denver, Tennessee, and the Giants. Like, we're talking brutal. The only one you kind of look at there is maybe favorable is New England, and they haven't been like super bad defensively, but New England's the matchup there, and
I mean, Matty Stafford just
was fine, but Matthew
What?
Stafford's also Matthew Stafford
Right.
and not Anthony Richardson, right?
completed 18 for 27, 295, 4 touchdowns. Obviously, Anthony Richardson is not Matthew
Yeah.
Stafford, right? But
Like I
I
said,
mean,
New England's more of a neutral thing. It's not a positive matchup, right? But the rest of them are pretty negative matchups there. So take it with a grain of salt. I wouldn't be overly aggressive or anything with Mr. Anthony Richardson.
yeah, I would definitely try to get Matty Stafford in your lineup if you need help. He doesn't have the most ideal schedule
No, not at all.
going forward either. He's got the Eagles, Saints, Bills coming up, but
Saints is good, but the rest
the Rams' offense is competent enough. Matthew Stafford's competent enough. Obviously, his wideouts are competent enough to, at least
be fine, right?
be fine.
And
right?
better than anything else, right? I'll just throw in Drake May. Drake May should be rostered at this point. We've talked about him for,
We have.
I want to say like week 5, week 6, something like that. Needs to be rostered, and he probably should be rostered, but I just wanted to mention him real quick here. If he is on the wire, go pick him up. He's probably a top 12 to 10 quarterback rest of the season here.
Yeah.
He's been very good, and he's actually, you might not believe it, but he is like first and second in scramble rate, rushing, like added rushing EPA, and like all these different rushing metrics. He's adding a ton with his legs right now, so that's what you look for in fantasy football, just have a quarterback that can add the rushing upside. He absolutely does it, and he's looked fine.
Yeah.
So if he's on your wire, like I said, I just wanted to briefly mention it here.
Yeah.
Please pick him up. He doesn't need to be a waiver wire. He's kind of a weekly starter at this point.
This might be a hot take. I think Will Levis maybe deserves a look simply because the Titans have the most quarterback-friendly schedule coming up through the playoffs. Just want to mention that. Will Levis might be someone you want to look at. Maybe you got some room on your roster. Just throw him on there. Put some mayonnaise in your coffee.
Maybe it starts to go,
go
all right.
It might start to go all right. You know what I mean? So he's, obviously not setting the world on fire, but he did put up 295 passing yards on the Vikings.
Yeah. How many interceptions? Don't have that pulled up at the moment.
I don't have it pulled up.
That's kind of been the Vikings' MO. They're allowing a ton of passing yards, but it's just because offenses are not leading in games against the Vikings.
Yeah.
But
Like I said, not because he's setting the world on fire, but he does have a
Favorable.
good schedule coming up. So, maybe worth a look if you got room on your roster, right?
with that same avenue of thought, Tommy DeVito, obviously Daniel Jones, benched. Tommy Cutlets coming in here.
Tommy Cutlets.
He was fine last year. Honestly, he wasn't like an elite quarterback, but he looked competent enough, and he gets to throw to Malik Neighbors, who's very, very good, right? So if Tommy Cutlets can step in and at least be competent, you could be finding yourself some production here, especially because the Giants, like I said, in a similar avenue of thought here, gets a pretty favorable quarterback schedule the rest of the way as well. So
absolutely,
maybe Tommy Cutlets has himself a
maybe
little fun here at the end of the season. Hopefully not too much. Obviously, we're Giants fans, and the tankathon is in full effect, right?
Full effect right now.
So maybe not too much fun, but maybe enough fun to make the games worth watching.
Yeah.
Moving on from the
Moving
quarterbacks
on.
here, running back, kind of.
Oh, I did want to mention possibly Trey Lance as well. Trey Lance, last game before Monday, Cooper Rush played 3 quarters, and then they wanted to see what Trey Lance had in store for them. He played the last quarter. I mean, you never know, right? If he, let's just say, in a crazy world, Trey Lance takes the job over by the time you get to the fantasy playoffs, he's another rushing quarterback. He rushes at a very high rate. I think it's like 12.9%, which is on par with some of the premier rushers in the league. You never know. Got a roster
Yeah,
spot.
you can
Throw
see
Trey
it.
Lance on there. If anything, he's a good locker room guy.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
No?
I don't know. I
Not
don't
so
know the
much?
Trey Lance lore enough to know if he's a good locker room guy. He certainly ain't mentoring anyone.
Nah, he sure ain't.
So
But
unless
he's another Russian quarterback. If you don't have anything better on your roster, you throw him on. See what shakes as we get into fantasy football season. You never know. You might have yourself a late season contributor.
definitely something to monitor, but don't be overly aggressive and don't
No,
drop
definitely
anyone.
don't be.
If you've got room, you've got room, but don't
That's
drop
what-
anyone.
right.
It's a monitor
If
situation
you
there.
have room, throw them on there. Can't hurt nothing.
Running backs are nothing to look at crazy here with running backs.
Yeah,
I just
nothing
wanted to
super out of this world for sure.
mention Audric Estime in our waiver wire video last week. That's what I'm looking for here.
Was going to mention him, but then you didn't, just because
I didn't
we
feel like he
felt
was
like
worth.
it was gonna pan out.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was worth. He was like the
And that
hottest.
Sean Payton backfield, man. Look, you never know what Sean Payton's gonna do. You don't know what hot hand he's gonna go with. It's, I don't know.
So
Man.
he was the hottest waiver wire option last week, and I didn't mention him. I didn't even put him in the video because
Right.
I didn't feel like it was worth your time. I didn't feel like it was gonna his 14 carries for 56 yards or whatever. I didn't find it that inspiring.
Yeah,
For some first and second down early grinder and an offense that hasn't been producing anything outside of Bo Nix really, right? So I didn't feel like it was worth anyone's time. I didn't think it was a priority, so I didn't even mention him. But I did want to bring him up today just because I was right. Simply put, I just wanted to take the victory lap here.
victory lap on him. Didn't amount to anything.
And he straight up didn't. He got 3 carries for like 3 yards or something this week. It was like
Nah.
I don't know. That's how I felt. I was like, this is such a flash in the
Look,
pan.
Sean Payton hates your fantasy lineup. So
It's true.
whoever mentioned Audric Estime, Sean Payton knew they were talking about Audric Estime, and he said, "You know what? Watch this."
Yeah, it's gonna be the Javonte Williams show again. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I just wanted to take the victory lap and be like, that's why I didn't mention him last week. I didn't feel like it was worth it. Cam Akers is another option here. He has 12 plus touches in back-to-back weeks. He gets Chicago this week. They're kind of one of the biggest run funnels in the NFL. They're brutal against the pass, but a little more susceptible in the running game. Over the last 4 weeks, they're averaging 31.5 carries per game. That's carries allowed from the Bears. So heading into this week, Cam Akers, Aaron Jones, 31.5 carries is what's being averaged. You could see a very run-heavy scheme going on in this game. Like I said, Cam Akers has been averaging 12 plus carries the last couple of weeks. So he's a fine option because you're going to be missing out on guys like Chase Brown, James Cook, Bijan Robinson. I hope you haven't been starting Etienne, but it's very possible you have been. Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall. There's some running backs here that have definitely been mainstays in your lineup that you're going to be missing out on. So maybe you need a flex play. Cam Akers could deliver this week as he heads into a game that is probably going to have a very run-heavy script, and he's been getting the touches. He's going to be the volume.
And like we've said in the past, right? Like Aaron Jones is not the picture of health, right?
Oh, yeah, long-term.
You
Absolutely.
know, like he's not the picture of health. He's going to turn 30 in 2 weeks, right? He's going to hit that 30 burger, and
he's really remained relatively healthy.
He's
but
not necessarily healthy right now either, right?
Yeah.
He's nursing the ribs, I think, right? So you never know. Like, what if the coaching staff wants to rest him?
Yeah, in a game that they should win against the Bears, right?
Right, so that he's healthy for the playoffs, right? Now you got Cam Akers already on your bench.
And it's been happening. They traded for Cam Akers a few weeks ago.
Easy flex spot.
Last 2 weeks, 12 plus carries. So he's already been working his way in. He hasn't been immaculate, but this is a game where he could easily go out there and have that 10 to 15 carries and a run-heavy or a run-centric offensive scheme and find himself maybe with a tutty, and you could have, okay, I'm fine with the 11 points I have in my flex.
That's right. I'll take it.
And that's kind of what we're looking at here. And he's also a handcuff late as we get into later in the season. Running backs maybe start breaking down. You know, the game takes its toll on everybody, but running backs obviously are getting hit the most, and so missing a few games here late in the season, it happens. So Cam Akers is someone to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, all the other handcuffs that I mentioned last week, your Trey Bensons, Jalen Wrights, Tajay Spears, Balaki Karoom.
Karoom.
Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But those guys, people that would step into roles if the starter got injured. Make sure you're rostering those guys. As we get into late in the season, I hope you have your lineups mostly figured out, that you know who your starters are. You're not rostering a bunch of maybes. So make room for the handcuffs that could pop at any minute.
Yeah, make sure you got Tank Bigsby.
Tank
on your
Bigsby,
roster,
I'm sure
right?
he's rostered, but
Yep. He could easily, he's one of the few running backs right now that can easily be the starter and not need an injury for that to happen.
oh yeah, he
We've
could take
already-
over just by
Right, we've
playing.
already seen it, right? We've seen it when Etienne's been out, and really I don't feel like it has to be that way. I think Tank Bigsby could probably win the role outright, doesn't need an injury for it to happen, so definitely roster Tank Bigsby if he's out there.
Absolutely. Some of the wide receivers here, and by some of them, I've only got one in my notes here. There's Christian Watson, actually, is someone else here that I didn't
He
write
started
down.
picking it up, didn't he?
But late in the season here, we could see Christian Watson kind of emerge. I would have to imagine he's mostly rostered, but he's had enough of a slow season here that I think he could be available. I think he's worth adding. He obviously had 4 for 150 this week. So a pretty good week. And this offense has playoff aspirations. So they're going to want to start getting their playmakers going. It's been slow for quite a few weeks now. So Christian Watson, if he's on your wire,
Yeah.
definitely.
And you can kind of see it. If you've been watching the games, you can kind of see where some of that chemistry is starting to click a little bit with Jordan Love and Christian Watson. So if it continues to bloom,
Jaden Reed's definitely
only
kind
good
of faded
things.
away at this point
Yeah.
too. So
really
Doors
a lot.
open.
Really, that whole wide receiver core is open for someone to just take
really
it right
take it
now.
right. Yeah, for sure. So Christian Watson, if he's on your wire. But someone else I wanted to mention was Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Mr. MVS.
Mr. MVS.
He's obviously put up a couple of good weeks here. He's got 87 plus yards the last 2 weeks and 3 combined touchdowns. That's come off the back of
he's been a
3
top
and
5
4 targets, though.
wide receiver in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, like I said, it looks nice, but 3 targets 2
Yeah,
weeks ago,
it hasn't been
4
off.
targets last week.
Right.
We know MVS is not a good player, and so him to be hitting on these plays like this at a irresponsibly high rate, it's not going to hold. So don't be aggressive with MVS too. I don't know what other people are saying out in the fantasy football space if they're recommending him at this point, but
I mean, for context, I say he's a top 5 wideout over the past couple weeks, but last week he scored like 15 points.
no,
Was it that?
No, I like I said,
Did he score more than that?
he had 2 touchdowns 2 weeks ago. He had a
2
touchdown
weeks ago.
touchdown last week, and he's had 87 plus yards in each of those weeks.
Okay.
So
Yeah, about 15, 16 points last
something
week.
like that. Yeah.
So, take it with that context.
Yeah, I'm just saying, don't go aggressive for MVS. It's
for
not
sure.
worth it. We know who MVS is, and this is not something you want to be targeting. Do you have any other wide receivers you wanted to mention around here?
No, I wanted to talk about Ricky Pearsall, but man, he let me down last week. He had that one good week where you kind of felt like, oh man, there might be something going on here, and then disappeared last week. So I'm not gonna mention Ricky Pearsall.
It's the Juwan Jennings show.
Yeah,
Juwan
right
Jennings,
now Juwan
league
Jennings
winner.
is the man over there.
He's been great. He's been great.
There's no, especially when Kittle comes back, right?
I think he played last week. I don't think he's missed any time.
Did he play last week?
Oh yeah.
He didn't play last week.
I don't think he's missed any time. I'm gonna fact check it real quick, but
Kittle was not active last week.
someone's wrong.
Someone is wrong here.
You can't both be right on this one.
Nope, sure can't.
I feel 95% confident. Just throwing that out
Give
there.
it to me. Give it to me. I could take it. That's why I got these broad shoulders.
It's loading slow. The suspense.
So, but anyway, I was gonna mention Ricky Pearsall, and I guess he's still worth the mention, right? We're still talking about him. You could have him on your roster and see what pans out, but in my estimation, you got Juwan Jennings, you got Kittle, you got Debo, and McCaffrey back. Like there's no
Debo
room
might
there.
be irrelevant at this point too. He's been brutal.
There's no room for Ricky Pearsall here, in my estimation.
I think honestly, I think it's Jennings, McCaffrey, and Kittle once Kittle
Right.
comes back because Debo hasn't been really a factor. I think Debo might get traded. I don't know. I don't know how much longer he needs to be on that team.
Yeah.
He's not been nearly as productive for multiple seasons now. And Juwan Jennings, I think he's third year player at this point, breaking out. He's been legitimately good when you watch him play. When you look at his per route metrics,
30-year breakout. We talk about it all the time, man.
he has been legitimately good at football. They just signed him through 2028. Like he's the guy over there at this point, and I don't think
they just gave Ayuk that
massive contract.
massive contract, and Juwan Jennings is like, he's the John Travolta right now. Just
Yeah, he's taking it right now, and who's to say Jennings isn't better than Ayuk?
I mean, who's to say? It?
Anyway, you were correct. Kittle was inactive, so
Yeah,
I will take the L there. I didn't even realize he missed that week,
Yeah.
but I don't have any Kittle shares.
And that's why I was, kind of hopeful last week too, right? The week prior, you kind of saw him, get going just a tad, just a little bit. This past week, Kittle was out. It was wide open for him to have a game there, or be at
least better than
a contributor than
zero
than just
receptions.
0 points. Like, So yeah, like I said, I was gonna mention Pearsall, but in my estimation, I don't think there's a lot of room for him there to really play a factor for your league this year. But like we say, it's a weird game played with an oblong shaped ball, and weird stuff happens. So roster him. He ain't gonna hurt nothing by taking up a roster spot, and you never know, you might have yourself something there.
Absolutely. Moving on to tight ends here for the waiver wire. Will Dissly has been trending up for several weeks now, and he has at least 6 targets in 4 of the last 5 games. This week he gets Baltimore, which is one of the best tight end matchups across the league. So look for Will Dissly to be a premier streaming option. You could be maybe you've been streaming the Cincinnati tight end room, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram's kind of a big one, Taysom Hill. Conklin's had his weeks, but there's some tight ends here you could be missing from the bye week, but tight end's always a wasteland. Will Dissly, even if you have a tight end, I think it's worth picking up and worth starting this week. He's definitely going to grade out well. He's got a good matchup. He's been playing well. Will Dissly's is a fine option. Jonnu Smith, over in Miami, he's actually been the most productive Miami receiver over the last 6 weeks or something like that. I can't remember the exact amount, but
bombs away.
Been outproducing Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle by a significant degree here. So that's Jonnu Smith. I ain't got much more to say about Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just
and like we said, during draft season, even all the way back to draft season, Taysom Hill, after the injuries.
Yeah,
right?
Pre-draft, he was one of our favorite picks at tight end, and the injuries.
But shout out to Taysom Hill. I mean, he had one of the best fantasy performances in the history of fantasy football. I mean, 3 touchdowns? He ran for 130 some odd yards, just
8 receptions, 50 yards.
Completely steamrolled over the Cleveland Browns. So Taysom Hill, hit the cannon. Hit the cannon for Taysom Hill. Oh yeah. Badoom. Taysom Hill hit the cannon.
Fantasy player of the week, no doubt.
Oh, there is no doubt about it. Now, having said that, he's probably not going to go out and score you 50 some odd points.
Rest of the way every week.
Or 30 some odd points, whatever your scoring system is. He's probably not going to do that every week, right? But his ceiling is higher than any tight end that you can think of. So whether he gets you 6, 8, or he gets you 20, 30, 40, Taysom Hill is the guy to have in that tight end spot right now.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, the only person I would prefer at this point, I think, is Brock Bowers and Trey
Brock
McBride.
Bowers,
The only
Trey
two,
McBride.
and just because
Otten,
too, yeah, those are the three. Those are the only three, just because Taysom Hill is always going to be more volatile than those three have been.
right?
The ceiling might be a little bit higher, but floor wise, you're going to be getting a way better floor with those
Yeah,
three players
for sure.
playing a more traditional tight end role. I mean, Brock Bowers went out there, 13 receptions, broke the rookie rookie receptions record last week. So
Good for him. Man, hit the cannon for Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers coming up.
Yeah! Ba-doom! Brock Bowers gets the cannon too. Let's go. Good for him.
Love to see it, yeah. I was obviously not super high in the offseason. You were. You get to take that victory lap. I obviously couldn't have predicted that Devontae Adams would get traded, which definitely helped big time.
It definitely did help. You're definitely right about that. And your logic was sound at the time, right?
Absolutely.
You got Devontae Adams there, Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers is supposed to be the guy. So the trade did definitely help.
And it was hard for me to imagine that they would have such a high pass rate this season. They came in and completely 180'd. Obviously, with Antonio Pierce last season, they were one of the most run-heavy teams. And so it would make sense. Probably going to be very run-heavy again. So when you've got a below-average offense that wants to be run-heavy with below-average quarterback play, I was just like, I don't know how this. I don't know how this happens. And then they came out and were. I know early in the season had one of the highest pass rate over expectations in the league. Devontae Adams gets traded. Brock Bowers is obviously an elite prospect and came out and showed it. So absolutely, I felt my logic was sound at the time, and that's kind of the gambler's fallacy. Is just because it didn't work out doesn't mean that it was the wrong assessment.
That it was the wrong take.
I feel like it was the right assessment given the information we had, and probably the most probable one with once again the information we had. But the outcome did not go that way. So the gambler's fallacy would just say that was the wrong assessment or the wrong move, the wrong decision. But it's a fallacy for a reason. That's not true. It doesn't make it the wrong decision.
Yeah. Fantasy logic, it's...
You're playing probabilities here.
It's
You're
like
gambling.
predicting the weather.
You're gambling.
The forecast may call for sunny skies and then you get rain, or it could call for rain and then you get sunny skies. You just, sometimes it's that's why we always say that no one knows, no one's an expert, right? There are no experts in fantasy football. It's all your best logical decisions and based off projections, assessments, right? What is the fantasy football data giving you, how you interpret it, and then you make your decisions. It doesn't mean you're making bad decisions. It just means that, there's always that, like you say, that fallacy that goes along with it sometimes. It's not always that you made the wrong decision. It's just it didn't pan out.
You got that 5% chance. That 5% chance came in.
Yeah.
Right. So the best you can do as the viewer here is find the people that the logic sounds sound, the people that you trust, and
go with it.
Help them help you evaluate. Because at the end of the day, we're always going to tell you to go with your guys and go with your gut, because
we're going to give you the nuggets, but we're not going to tell you who to play. It's your lineup.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, I think that wraps up Waiver Wire. So that'll wrap up Waiver Wire, right? So we'll be back here in a moment with
the
Start Sit and our next four
Start Sit, first 4 games of the slate.
Absolutely.
Be right back. All right, first game of the Week 12 slate, Steelers at Browns.
Division rivalry.
Division rivalry.
These teams play each other tough.
They do. But I think that the chemistry that's building with Russell and George Pickens right now,
it's been good.
It's been good. I think the Browns can be had in that arena right there.
Yeah, I'd definitely be fine playing Russ and Pickens. Kind of the only two that I think grade out fine. They've been playing well, and while both these teams are bottom 10 in EPA per rush allowed, so it's kind of like a no-go zone for the running game, that should force Russell Wilson and George Pickens to kind of be the focal point of moving the ball on the Browns, because the Browns are actually pretty neutral against the pass, brutal against the run. So teams are having to throw on the Browns to really move the ball. So Russ and Pickens should be fine. Those kind of the only people. You can see
Pickens starting to grow.
Find some consistency.
Yeah, he's starting to grow with Russell. He's starting to be used not just as this go deep and go catch
4 receptions a game.
Yeah, you're starting to see him kind of branch off. His wide receiver tree is starting to expand, and when you have Russell throwing you the deep ball, is one of the best deep ball passers
absolutely
in the league. Like it makes for a good tandem, and they're definitely. Russell is finding his resurgence, right? Maybe Sean Payton just didn't like him and just wanted to just get him out. Maybe he just wanted to get him out of Denver because, like you said, it wasn't right. Russell's not my guy, so you know what? I'm gonna sabotage this whole thing. Maybe Russell wasn't the problem, right?
Russ left and is looking good. Bo Nix is looking good. It's like, how does this?
Yeah.
How did this happen?
So you had Russell Wilson looking
like
horrid. But you got Bo Nix over here
looking good,
developing,
and then
right?
Russell is in a different spot looking good.
Yeah.
What happened? Yeah, I said it Sunday. I was like,
yeah.
That fool Sean Payton was sabotaging my boy.
But yeah, it's definitely developing. The Browns secondary can be had between these two.
Absolutely.
Start them.
Yep. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren are both really low end plays. They've been splitting touches now that Warren's back healthy. Warren's been getting touches, been getting the receiving work. So you got a split backfield in a brutal matchup. I would avoid. I would try to sit him if possible. These are two teams that play each other tough. These are two top end defenses. Yep. It's just you're gonna have to question how much scoring is going on. You're gonna have to question how many plays are being run.
This could turn into a kickathon.
Yeah, it's. I would avoid Najee and Warren if I could. They're really really low in plays, I think.
I know there's the temptation to say, "Oh, well, Taysom Hill just ran over."
Absolutely.
Just ran over Cleveland, right? 138, 3 touchdowns.
But the way you play Taysom Hill as a non-traditional running back is a lot different than you play Kamara. You got to look at what Kamara did to really gauge what the running back's going to do. Obviously, Kamara had a lower-end performance here last week, so...
Najee?
But we're talking about Taysom Hill and Kamara.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about Taysom and Kamara, yeah. I got confused.
Kamara, the traditional running back, didn't really do much.
It
was Taysom Hill taking off on these massive plays because Taysom Hill isn't
He's
defended.
A surprise. He's the hand up Mona Lisa skirt.
Absolutely. That's exactly what he is.
So, so just be, avoid
if you could.
Yeah, if you can avoid, you might not be in a situation where you can avoid. You might have to play Najee because he's one of the running backs that you need to depend on. If that's the case,
you'll need a touchdown.
You just got to hope for a touchdown, or maybe just hope that he has a good day, right? But just lower your expectations. He may not be in for a good one.
Absolutely. As we already mentioned, George Pickens, he's been playing well, and primary outside receivers have had production against the Browns. They've been pretty neutral against the pass, so he's a pretty strong play. Russell Wilson, fine streamer. He's been playing pretty well.
Yeah.
Nothing to get overly excited about, but if you need to stream because, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, you can't find Matthew Stafford. You got one of those guys on bye. Russ could find himself having a pretty productive day. On the Browns side of things, please just don't. Jameis, we love Jameis.
Jameis, we love you.
But unlike the Browns, the Steelers are really, really tough against the air too. So it's a no-go zone through the ground. You can't throw on them. It's just we just saw Lamar Jackson and that offense be stifled and lose against the Steelers last week. In case you didn't know, Jameis Winston isn't Lamar Jackson, and Nick Chubb right now isn't Derrick Henry. So
Nick Chubb right now isn't even Nick Chubb.
No, and it's kind of sad. I need Nick Chubb to be okay and look like himself by the end of the season, or I'm going to be really crushed on the inside a little bit. But right now he's not looking good, and Jerome Ford stole all of the passing down work last week, so you didn't even have volume to fall back on for Nick Chubb. So Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, please get him out of your lineup.
And then outside of that, what? Judy's
been fine. Tillman's been fine. Elijah Moore kind of been fine. But this is not the week for him.
No.
This is not the week for him. David Njoku is probably the only one I think I'd be fine playing this week. He's obviously been very good. Jameis Winston looks for him. And there have been some instances of tight ends doing okay against the Steelers, and so as the kind of the I don't know if I want to say premier, but kind of the premier pass catcher on the Browns team, I think Njoku's the only one I'd be fine playing.
If anyone can be slated for a good day, probably Njoku.
Yeah, I would think so, just based off of the matchup and based off of.
And it might not even be a good day; just might be a serviceable day.
Yeah, especially for the tight end position, you'll take
right.
You'll take
You're
a
gonna
4.
take it.
You'll
Absolutely.
take a 4 for 60, a 4 for 40, and
yeah,
you're gonna like it
all day long.
I played Dawson Knox like everywhere last week. I took the 4 for 40, and I was like, them 8 points, I'm happy with it.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
I'm gonna take it.
That is Steelers Browns.
That'll do that one.
Yep.
Moving on to
Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Panthers.
Oh Lord, this is.
Chiefs about to take the L. I'm just kidding.
This is gonna be I'm predicting a massacre here. I don't know how anyone wouldn't predict a massacre, but I'm just saying this is gonna be a bloodbath.
Yeah,
Chiefs,
this
Panthers.
No running back has had over 58 yards rushing against the Chiefs the entire season.
So,
Not
what does
once.
that mean for you? If you've got Chuba Hubbard, who's been doing fantastic,
He's looked
he's
amazing.
been
He's
great
been doing
all
great.
season long. Volume may get you there,
To a
potentially.
serviceable day, but risky,
but
way more
just
risky than normal, and the ceiling is
definitely,
capped.
definitely temper your expectations with Chuba Hubbard this week.
He typically is, like in that RB1 range.
Yeah.
He's going to be downgraded.
Yeah, he's been great all
significantly.
season long.
You're going to need him to rack up some receptions. The Chiefs haven't even been allowing a ton of receptions, but that's the only time any running back has delivered even a semi-fine fantasy point production in against the Chiefs is kind of racking up some receptions. So Chuba, you're just going to hope that he gets enough receptions to give you a floor game.
Yep.
You should be happy with a floor game in this circumstance, and it doesn't completely bust. So low end play. If you've got a surplus, I mean, you didn't draft Chuba Hubbard significantly high, so hopefully you got options, right? I would just avoid. Like Chuba Hubbard's been great, but
This would be
the Chiefs have played great running backs.
Sit them if you've got other running backs with better options,
especially on a bad team.
Yeah.
Right. James Cook was fine last week because he scored 2 touchdowns, but did nothing else.
No, nothing.
I don't know if you know this. But the Panthers are not the Bills, right? So just I would avoid pretty much everyone on this Panthers team.
Yeah.
However,
there's no one to really play here.
with the teams being on bye that are on bye this week, maybe you need some sneaky desperation plays. I did some digging. Production from slot receivers and tight ends have been the most abundant against the Chiefs. So Jalen Coker and Jatavian Sanders are 2 desperation plays that, like, when I say desperation plays, we're talking desperation at tight end and like low end flex play just based off a matchup here. If Bryce Young is going to move the ball, I would think it would be fair to assume that these guys...
It's going to have to go through them.
Yeah. However, one little note that came out today, I did these notes not today. Adam Thielen, I think, is trending to play back this week.
I did see that.
Which adds a wrench into this equation entirely, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it sure does.
Because he was the primary slot receiver before he went down, right? So does Jalen Coker, who's kind of been okay, retain the slot role, or does it go back to Adam Thielen?
Right.
I don't have that answer for you, but if you have a strong vindication either way, you can use that use the information to make that determination here. But whoever ends up taking the slot role there could be a fine desperation play in your flex. Jatavian Sanders, who we've talked about for several weeks as a fine waiver wire ad, he's been just fine. He could be in for another good week. Those are the desperation plays here.
Yeah, that's 2 ways you could go with Thielen right now. It's either they're going to want to ease him in, just coming back from getting hurt, or they just say, hey, he's ready to go. They let him loose, and maybe the human dynamic takes over, right? Bryce is looking for his guy out there, right? And it could be Thielen, right? He's the most seasoned veteran out of everyone out there, right? He was the primary slot receiver before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Bryce may just go back to looking for Thielen.
Right? He could absolutely have a fine day as well.
Yeah,
right?
it could go any one of those two ways. We don't know which way it's going to go, obviously, but like as was mentioned, if you have a strong vindication either way, roll the dice.
Yeah. But those are either way, those are desperation plays. I hope
Right.
you're not in that situation this week, but all of us have different circumstances.
Right.
Obviously, on the Chiefs side of things, this is a premier matchup. Panthers are extremely positive in EPA per pass,
Susceptible
extremely
everywhere.
positive EPA per rush.
Play everyone you got.
Just look for the Chiefs to take out their frustrations with
Pacheco
last week's
comes back.
loss. Pacheco should be back. Must start. Patrick Mahomes must start. I would say D-Hop, Kelsey, Worthy, all strong to must start territory in a very positive matchup. I think all of them could crush this week, right? So that's how that looks for the Chiefs side.
Looks.
I'm sure you anticipated that with the Panthers being who they are. Next matchup. Vikings at Bears.
Vikings Bears. This one is another one of those just kind of like Steelers Browns, right? You got two defenses that are
playing very well
and could stifle each other,
and two offenses that are, the Bears.
Sometimes they're middling.
Is meh.
Meh.
Vikings offense is meh.
Sometimes meh. Yeah.
Right. So you got two premier defenses. You're like, oh, I don't know about this one.
Yeah.
I don't know about this one. That's how we're feeling about this.
Yeah.
These are two of
now,
the top
Bears
defenses.
can be had on the ground.
Absolutely.
They're definitely tougher through the air.
Yeah.
So
they're by EPA per pass the toughest in the league, but running wise, we're talking top 8. So the game plan, Kevin O'Connell is a smart man. Very, very good at coordinating an offense. I am sure the game plan is to run the ball and just sneak away with a win. Yeah. So Aaron Jones is in a plenty good spot here. Cam Akers, as we mentioned in the waiver wire section of this,
work his way in,
He's been getting 12-plus touches here.
Have his own standalone value, right?
Yep. Fine streamer if you really need him. Justin Jefferson should be fine. There's kind of been enough room for the top wide receiver on a team to be fine, have a good floor day. Justin Jefferson's obviously a very, very good player.
No.
Yeah. Overrated. No, I'm just kidding. The sitting gritty. That's beautiful. But so Justin Jefferson probably starting him either way, just to expect that the ceiling is capped, and don't expect anything crazy. A performance like last week, what was it, like 6 for 80 or something like 14 points, whatever it was. That's probably in the realm of the range of outcomes here. Probably the most likely outcome. T.J. Hawkinson, a couple weeks ago, had a really fine day. Last week, not so much. There has been some tight end performances of note against the Bears here over the course of the season, so T.J. Hawkinson, if you have him, he's perfectly fine to play too. He could be the one who finds his room to produce some fantasy points here in this matchup.
Yeah, just remember he's still not.
He's coming off an ACL tear.
Right, he's still not 100%. They're still easing him back in. Don't expect I would not expect some big performance for TJ Hawkinson, but if that's the only way they're finding success moving the ball through the air, he could have himself a good day.
Absolutely. DeAndre Swift on the other side of things. Vikings are not susceptible on the ground. They're really, really tough on the ground. I think they're more in that bottom 5 range on the ground. I think they're the worst matchup, actually. We're thinking about the chart in my head over here. The worst matchup by rush EPA per play. So it's brutal. I know DeAndre Swift's been a fine asset, let's call it that. But last week he kind of split touches and split the backfield with Roshan Johnson with the new OC coming in. And that's the only reason I think it sticks, right? Because Shane Waldron was fired last week. Got a new OC who got Roshan Johnson involved. So that doesn't exactly make me excited because now you don't even have the volume to back yourself into
it doesn't give you
corner
confidence if you're a DeAndre Swift owner,
so
for sure.
I would look to just sit DeAndre Swift, not endure the headache because I could. This feels like a bust spot, right?
Yeah.
Just split the touches, walks into probably one of the worst matchups you can have as a running back. It just there's not much here that says, "Ooh, this is
not
a
exude
spot
confidence
that I want to play." I think it almost goes without saying, Caleb Williams in the passing game should be avoided.
Yeah,
pretty much all the way through here. Just they still aren't really hitting their stride.
no.
There's some things trending up with last week. I would say as a full game, when you watch it, it was probably one of the best that Caleb's put on film just yet in his short NFL career. Right, he looked a lot better. Roma Dunze kind of got going.
That's what I was going to say.
There's some positives here, but I don't expect this as a build-on week, right? This is a very, very tough matchup.
This is a very tough matchup.
So just avoid here. Wait for it to kind of work itself out.
Wait for a better day.
Absolutely. And that does it for the Vikings and Bears. Moving on into Titans and Texans. We've got another
one.
Another defensive matchup here.
Yeah,
that
this
just
one's
looks
another
to avoid.
tough one.
Yeah, so
another tough one. Titans are not an easy out at all.
One of the top defenses in the league. Right. Texans, probably the hottest defense in the league right now.
Even with Nico coming back, and when you think of the Texans, you think of this great passing offense. Like, I don't see it this week for sure. No. Definitely not against the Titans.
With that being said, scroll on my notes over here. CJ Stroud and Nico Collins are must-starts regardless of matchup here. They're just two really good players that are going to be the focal point of the passing attack every single week. So I think they're still in your lineup here, and there's been some room for wide receiver ones to be fine against the Titans just because the Titans kind of stay in games. So it's not typical that you find the game's just completely getting away from them. Yeah. So Nico Collins, I think, should be fine. Even if it's not a massive ceiling game, I think he should be fine enough that he needs to be in your lineup.
I wouldn't be sitting Nico.
No, he's got too high of a ceiling. You just got to get him in your lineup. CJ Stroud, if you have him, he's still in must-start territory. Joe Mixon lands himself a really, really tough matchup. Obviously, yesterday on Monday night against Dallas, he had one of the best matchups, and he played like it, right?
Man.
But he's kind of played like that in every game, regardless.
He's been having a great season.
This is brutal, but he's shown that he can produce in the passing game if he can't get room in the running game. I think it was a few weeks ago, he only had like 50 rushing yards, but he added on another 50 receiving yards. So he's getting it done in the receiving game to compensate for matchup variance. And obviously, he's getting plenty of touchdowns. So Joe Mixon, despite the really, really tough matchup, I must start. Like,
you're playing him.
Don't get cute here and get a little too hung up on the...
Don't get cute here, like the great Matthew Berry says.
Absolutely. Don't get cute here and get a little too hung up on the matchup. Joe Mixon is still a must start.
You are playing Mixon.
On the Titans side of things, Will Levis is all over the place all the time.
Put mayonnaise in your coffee.
I'm not convinced. Calvin Ridley had some room there. I don't think this is the matchup for it. Tony Pollard, if he's, if you have him, I think he's probably the only fine play just because he's typically been fine off of volume, but even him, this is a lower end play, absolutely, right? So avoid if you can. Outside of Stroud, Nico, and Mixon, this is a matchup I would just look to avoid. And if you've got players that maybe grade out similarly in better matchups with higher ceilings that project to be more offensive led, then I would definitely target those matchups because you can have more scoring, more yards, more plays that'll open the door to more fantasy points. And kind of these games, as we talked about here, Vikings, Bears, Titans, Texans, Steelers, Browns, you've got prime defensive matchups that are going to likely produce lower scores, lower plays, lower yardage. Those are the games you want to avoid on a weekly basis just because the ceiling isn't there at all because you need plays to produce fantasy points. So those are the matchups to kind of avoid when you see them coming, and look for
the kickers.
The kickers. That's typically what it is, right?
Look for the kickers, man.
Let's get some
kickers. Kickers are people too.
Kahimi Fairbairn, Nick Folk.
No Falcon way.
What is it? William Reichard at the Vikings. Reichard, something like that.
I think it's Reichard.
Bears. They've got
Cairo
Santos. That's right. Steelers Browns, obviously the great
The
Chris Boswell,
Boz.
who
Let's
just put up
go.
a monster performance last week. And the Browns. Who's kicking for the Browns these days?
Hopkins?
I think it's Dustin Hopkins.
Is it Dustin Hopkins?
Look for those kickers. I didn't know we were mentioning kickers today, but
That's
that's
right.
what just happened.
God bless the kickers, man.
That
Kickers are people too.
And sometimes they suck.
And sometimes they suck.
Can't believe Brandon. I needed Brandon Arbery to win me my week yesterday, and he screwed me.
Didn't do anything. That's all right. You know.
That
It's
is the
like
matchups for the week, though, or not the week, but for today. Those are the 4 matchups we've gone over.
Okay, so we covered Waiver Wire, covered the first 4 games of the slate. Join us next time. We're gonna keep covering games as the week progresses. So, for the Tank Sinatra, this is Eddie Bravo. We're signing out. Join the militia! Ah!